Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to join you today at Finland's Pharma Availability Forum. Unfortunately, not in person as I would have liked to, but at least virtually. My name is Nathalie Moll, and I'm the Director General of the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations. And I'm really delighted to be able to give our perspective on what we can put in place in order to ensure that the incredible developments in medical innovation can reach patients in Europe faster today, as well as the future patients. After all, medicines are transforming the lives of people across Europe every single day. Some of these examples of what this innovation has meant for people are, for example, the HPV vaccine that has reduced the risk of cervical cancer by nearly 100%. It's preventing over 27,000 cases of cervical cancer each year. There's such impressive results. And other innovation, if I can think of, for example, 98% of people living with hepatitis C can be cured through just a course of 8 to 12 weeks of medicines. And 1 in 5 patients can be delisted from the liver transplant waiting list. Research continues. Innovation follows innovation. Some of the examples that are now being developed, for example, through this incredible scientific breakthroughs, are new remyelinating treatments that have the potential to slow down or prevent or even reverse the damage caused by multiple sclerosis. And I'm sure many of you, like I, know people who would benefit from these kind of treatments. Or gene therapy for hemophilia A, which would be a one-time treatment to reduce spontaneous bleedings, replace unpleasant weekly intravenous treatments. I honestly, in the last 30 years since studying biotech at university, I can't remember a time when innovation was moving faster than now. And these advances are helping us to address unmet medical needs and tackle the world's most debilitating diseases. There's still a lot to be done, of course, to meet patients' unmet needs, as well as to ensure that patients in Europe can benefit from these innovative treatments, because it's not enough to find them, it's not enough to develop them, they actually have to reach the patients. We have over 8,000 new medicines in development in the pipeline. And the question for European policymakers is not if innovation is going to happen, because it's happening, but where is that innovation going to happen? And that really matters. It matters for patients, it matters for our healthcare systems, it matters for the research ecosystem, and it also matters in this moment in Europe for our resilience, for our jobs and our growth more than ever before. Europe's share of global pharmaceutical investment has fallen and has been declining steadily for the last 20 years. It's fallen by 25%, which doesn't mean that that investment has disappeared. It means that that investment has gone outside of Europe. Since 2020, for example, CAR-T clinical trials have almost tripled, but only 2 in 10 of those happen in Europe. And that worrying trend, where more and more investments in pharmaceutical R&D are happening outside of Europe, is bad for European patients. We really want to ensure that European patients are not at the back of the queue or relying on diagnostics and treatments and vaccines developed in other parts of the world. We want to make sure that they are as close to the innovation as possible, that they are in the front line. And we want to make sure that European patients are able to participate in clinical trials run in Europe. Because despite producing the most academic papers on advanced therapies like gene and cell editing, our policy framework means that clinical trial activities is twice as high in the US than in Europe and 3 times as high in China. Having been involved in the development of the policy framework for these medicines back in the beginning of the 2000s, this is particularly difficult for me to accept. And why is that? Because innovation, as I mentioned before, only matters really if it reaches patients. After years of the research and development, companies really want the medicines to help the people as quickly as possible. What have we done as an industry to participate in that race to get to patients as fast as possible? We've taken some concrete actions and developed a number of measures that as a package, we really believe can create more predictable and timely step change in access to medicines across Europe without harming our life science competitiveness or impinging on member state health competence. Our industry, so our members, enacted a commitment in April 2022 to file for pricing and reimbursement in all 27 member states at the very latest after 2 years of gaining European marketing authorization. And in order, because a commitment is always good, but it's only valid if you can measure the result of that commitment, if you can monitor it. So in addition to that commitment, we created an access portal to measure the real-time impact of that commitment, to give transparency around the access hurdles and delays in individual member states, so that then once you know what the problem is, you can address it and hopefully you can solve it. And together with these two elements, the commitment and the portal, we also developed a conceptual framework around equity-based tiered pricing. So this is to ensure that innovative medicines are priced according to a country's ability to pay. Now, of course, that framework needs to be set in place. It can't be set in place by industry alone. There are a number of factors that will enable that framework to work. It is based on a principle of solidarity, where different member states will support other member states so that we can have a price differential. And achieving faster, more equitable access to medicines and retaining this industry, the research, the developments, the jobs, the investment, requires choosing the right policy options to address the right problems. And this is a crucial moment at European level. As you may know, we are revising for the first time in 20 years all the pharmaceutical legislation that we have. And we need absolutely to get it right. The legislation is 20 years old, so it's a fantastic opportunity to make sure that the regulatory system is up to date, it's cutting edge, it's very attractive for investments, and it matches today's science, but also tomorrow's science. This is not the moment to get that wrong, because we only revise this kind of legislation once every 20 years. Science is just going to continue to exponentially develop, and we must be at the forefront of capturing that science and delivering it to our patients. At the moment, what we've seen of the draft legislation, it does not do what it needs to do. It doesn't reverse that downward trend of investments that has been happening for the last 20 years. Stop it and reverse it, but on the contrary, the proposals that are currently in the text that we have been seeing or that have been discussed at European level will have a significant negative impact on jobs, on investment, on growth, but most importantly, on clinical trials and access to the latest treatments. It will really further disadvantage patients and the industry in Europe, and widening the already existing gap between Europe and other regions of the world. It will make it more and more difficult to retain industry's 42 billion euro annual investment in European research and development. And it puts at risk the largest contribution to Europe's trade surplus of any high-tech sector, together with 2.5 million jobs across the European region. The revision of the pharma legislation is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to put European patients back on the cutting edge of treatment, to create those high-value jobs, to drive growth, and very importantly, to keep Europe more resilient and able to deal with future health crises. That can only be achieved through pragmatic decisions that support patients and industry. So I call on you to consider this very carefully, to the extent in which you are involved in this, to make sure that the European regulatory framework becomes globally competitive through this revision, by harmonizing the processes that are now too fragmented between Europe and national level, expanding the role of the European Medicines Agency where science is evolving. For example, in drug-device combinations, 20% of future medicines are going to be combination products, just to mention a few examples. And importantly, next to these regulatory adjustments, we really need to make sure, and I urge you to make sure, that the incentives, the intellectual property framework that this industry is based upon continues to protect investment in medical research in the EU and keeps us globally competitive. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you a fantastic forum. And once again, I'm sorry not to be there this time, but I'm sure that I will hear all about it from my colleagues in Finland. Thank you very much and have a fantastic day. Goodbye.